Hi, my name's Rebecca Hembling and I am the Head of Marketing and Business Development at Wrays, and I am very delighted to be here today with Dr Kath Giles, MedTech CEO, Doctor and Investment Manager. Wow. Kath Giles is the CEO of OncoRes Medical, a WA-based MedTech startup pioneering handheld device designed to prevent repeat surgeries for breast cancer. Welcome, Kath.
Thanks so much, Beck. It's great to be chatting to you today.
Let's jump straight in. Kath, breast cancer is the most common type of cancer in women across the world, and you've developed an innovative solution to what is a worldwide problem. Can you tell us about the probe and the technology behind its success?
Absolutely. So, Beck, I'm sure you'll be surprised to hear that currently surgeons are still relying on their senses of sight and touch to figure out whether or not they've removed all of the cancer, which in an age where technology rules our lives is kind of mind-blowing, really.
It is actually, yeah.
And so as a result, with, as you said, breast cancer is what is the most common cancer in women worldwide. And we're really fortunate that the way that we diagnose it is getting better, and we're diagnosing women far earlier than we ever did before, which means the breast cancers that we diagnose are smaller, and therefore the surgeons can remove just the cancer as opposed to having to remove all of the whole breast through mastectomy.
Yeah.
So 65% of women these days in sort of the US, Europe and Australia will be treated with a lumpectomy as opposed to a mastectomy, which is fantastic, except then, and the figures, big data has shown us in Australia, 50% of those women, in 30%, the pathologist will discover that not all the cancer's been removed, that there's cancer too close to the edge of the specimen that they are analysing, and that infers, it doesn't confirm, it infers that cancer's left inside the patient. And we know when those margins are not clear, that woman will have at least a 2 times increased chance of recurrence of the cancer. So it's super important that they address that, and that often will mean a repeat operation. So 1 in 5, somewhere globally, but around 1 in 5 women will have to have a repeat operation. And that's a terrible experience. I mean, you've just had this devastating diagnosis. You have confidence in your surgeon. You think that, you have to have the surgery, and then you go on to the other treatments like radiation or chemo, which are far more taxing. But then you very soon, for 20 to 30% of these women find out that actually they didn't get it all. And I think, so not only do they have to then suffer a further operation, but we know that every time you take a patient back to theatre, there's more chance that they're going to have an infection or that they'll have bleeding, and 37% of these women will then opt for a mastectomy. So it's a complete change of course in the treatment, not to mention the fact that they've lost confidence in their treatment so early on when they've got such a long journey ahead of them. So I think for so many reasons, finding a solution to that problem's incredibly important. And so that was a very long start to the answer, but yes, what we've done is there's an awesome team of Professor Christabel Saunders, who's a world-renowned breast cancer surgeon, and Associate Professor Brendan Kennedy, who's a superstar engineer, both in Western Australia. They started working together in 2008 to create an imaging technology that would effectively reproduce the surgeon's sense of touch at a microscale. So as I said at the beginning, surgeons are used to using their sense of touch to determine they've got all the cancer, but they're feeling for less than 1 millimetre of cancer through at least one set of surgical. So it's not surprising that they miss it. Our technology creates an image of tissue stiffness at a micro scale and then puts the image up on the screen. So effectively giving the surgeons superpowers of touch. They can see what their finger would be feeling at a microscopic scale.
Can I just ask you, Kath, what's your medical background? So how did you connect in with those two doctors?
Yeah, so for me, I first saw this technology in 2013 and it was love at first sight. So I graduated medicine. I worked for 1.5 years in the standard training programs, and then I did an MBA, and I've since then worked alongside surgeons in theatre, so primarily in so obstetrics and gynae and orthopaedics. And then I worked in venture capital, and I was working at Brandon Capital Partners. This technology was at UWA. I saw it, and I thought it was just what surgeons would be looking for. So no matter what their specialty is, they want more accurate information to help them do better surgery, and it has to be under their control. They don't like waiting for the pathologist to come in, or the radiologist or radiographer to come in. Something in their hands that they can use to improve surgical accuracy was just such an exciting thing for me to see.
Yeah, of course. As you were telling me just now about the story that a woman would go through in perhaps having that surgery for the first time, and then the worry of having that again a second time, I can't help think of the anxiety that would come with that, and all of the emotional kind of detriment that comes there as well. And we love that your technology focuses not only on those clinical benefits, but also the emotional benefits, providing hope and confidence for women with breast cancer. Did you realise that that impact would be there when you were developing the tech from the outset?
No, not from the outset. And I think, to be honest, it became much more clear to me over the last few years, and that's because of a personal impact. So my family about a year ago lost my mum's best friend, who was like part of our family. It wasn't to breast cancer, it was to another type of cancer, but we'd been part of her cancer journey for 15 years. And it became very clear to me how important it was to be able to give that, you know, people, whether they're women with breast cancer or other people with other types of cancers, the confidence that they had the best possible foundations for their cancer battle, that the surgeon could say, we've got it all. You can, because I think the psychological, we know that your psychological state impacts your the state of your health in general. And being able to have that positive mindset of, I've got this, my team have got this with me, I think is incredibly important for the patient and their family to be able to, give that battle their greatest fight.
Yeah, you've got to go in with that kind of fighting mindset, don't you? Yeah. Kath, I know you've set up a very broad intellectual property portfolio with the potential to adapt the probe to other applications. How do you see the technology being used in areas outside of breast cancer? Those kind of questions are kind of going through my mind as I'm imagining what that tech looks like in the surgeon's hand. I'm thinking, oh, can it go to other bits of the body too?
It absolutely can. So I think, with all startups, we've got to have laser-like focus on our first indication, which we do, which is breast cancer with the first generation of our technology. We've absolutely seen the possibilities and potential of our technology outside of breast cancer, and we've spoken to a number of surgeons in other fields, so neurosurgeons, head and neck surgeons, colorectal surgeons. We spoke to a bunch of different surgeons, and the feedback has been resoundingly positive that, surgeons rely so heavily on their sense of touch for so many things. So being able to, and particularly in cancer surgery, so absolutely, there's desire and want for this technology in other cancers. One particular neurosurgeon who sort of said, can I just have the probe? I've got brains open every day. Just let me have a go. So,
wow. Yeah.
So there's definite keenness, which is great. Also, I guess, surgery is changing. So more and more, it's much better for patients to have minimally invasive surgery or keyhole surgery, or now also moving into robotic surgery. In both of those surgeries, you take the surgeon's hands out of it. So they are outside the body manipulating controls, and they lose that crucial sense of touch. So our technology, we also have a second generation of the technology that's just received $1 million government grant, from the BMTH program.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really exciting. And that's enabling us to do some proof of concept work for that second generation of the technology, which will be more applicable to some of those other indications, particularly minimally invasive and robotic surgery. And yeah, just add, round out our portfolio and offer a lot of opportunity going forward. And I think one of the other key things you sort of touched on is, and it's important to note, our portfolio is form factor agnostic. So in terms of our patent coverage, which is fantastic because we know that different clinical indications will require a different form. We know Brendan's team, back before we even made the investment, had already put this technology down a tiny needle. So we know that the technology itself is definitely something that can be implemented into existing surgical tools if necessary, or a whole new probe can be developed for that particular case.
Australia produces such great medtech. I love hearing all of these stories. It's so fascinating. Kath, like many women involved in WiTWA, you juggle multiple roles. I've already mentioned you're a surgeon, a venture capitalist, and a CEO of a medtech company. How do you balance all of that?
Well, yeah, like you say, it's a continuing juggle. Luckily, I'm not the surgeon with the whole responsibility, so I'm only an assistant to the surgeons, which is
I love how you play that down. I'm only an assistant. Only an assistant surgeon.
I'm not licensed to cut. I'm allowed to sew people up though.
Mm-hmm.
And that I haven't done very much of recently. So I've assisted Christabel a couple of times, which has been fantastic to really get to see, I'd seen cancer surgery before, but very much seeing exactly what we're doing and how it's game-changing in terms of being able to be in there with the surgeon, understanding what their needs are. Obviously, our team are in there all the time, but getting my hands dirty in there is a real privilege to be able to do. So that I haven't done so much recently, but yeah, primarily I'm working on OnCareers now. Helga's taken on a lot of my role at Brandon, which is awesome to get to work together with her. And I think, like all startups need to focus, I also need to focus. And so OnCareers is my key focus at the moment, and my two little girls.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. What advice do you have for other startups, particularly those in the medtech sector?
Oh, I have learned so much in getting the opportunity to be on the operating side as opposed to on the investing side. I guess one of the things that I learned last year was we got to be part of the MedTech Innovator Program, which is a global accelerator program. We're the first Australian company to be able to get into it, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that we sit in Australia and we know that in most cases we need to focus on the US as our first market. It's a great first market. But I think that it is so complicated and so in the regulatory setting, in the reimbursement setting, and it's so much more complicated than our healthcare system in Australia, and so fragmented that the importance, I think, of really going over, being in the US, perhaps doing some of those accelerator programs, or, if it's outside of medtech, making sure if you're not targeting the Australian market, figuring out a way to quickly immerse yourself in the market that you are looking to target and get some key supporters there. So as part of the MedTech Innovator, they brought a whole bunch of advisors around all of the startups. And we were super fortunate that we, since then, have picked up a reg advisor who's based in California, who is actually out of the exact FDA group or subgroup that we need to submit to. So that's incredible, because it's not only the knowledge of the system, it's the network within the system. And similar with our market access consultant, Leslie, who we were really fortunate flew out to Perth just before the lockdown. She got home just in time. She's been an advisor to the CMS, which is the Medicare and Medicaid in the US, for years. So again, it's not only her immense knowledge, but it's the network that she has. And, and then for us, it's the endorsement that these incredible people have you know, look to spend their precious time on helping us.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's about not only understanding the market really well, but also about having that visibility within that market for them to, I guess, recognise your credibility in many ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, how has your experience as a venture capitalist informed the way that you manage OncoWrays?
Great question. So really, I guess one of the key things is I know how hard investment is to get, and I know how important it is to make sure you get the right investors. So not only investors that can just bring you the money, but investors that also can add value to the business, and then also have to share the goals of the existing investors and management team. Because the last, you know, too many times you see, if there is misalignment across any of those things, that causes real issues for companies. So I think from that point of view, I guess I know that before we find the right investor, there will be many, many, many pitches. I don't get disheartened when people say no, because I understand that until we find that perfect match, you know, it's not going to be in anyone's interest. So I think that's sort of given me a huge amount of resilience going into sort of the fundraising conversations. And then I guess, fortunately, having had a long experience in venture, that's been fortunate as well, as it gives me credibility when I go talk to other investors. Because I guess, you know, I think we know that being the entrepreneur is a lot harder than being the investor. And if I'm crazy enough to have chosen to be the entrepreneur in this situation, then it must be for a really good reason. And it is, because I really, really believe in the potential of this technology to make a massive difference for women, and then outside breast cancer, for cancer patients around the world.
And I guess you're speaking their language as well with that. To develop medical technology involves building relationships with a host of industry partners. Do you think that it's easier to do this in Perth because of the collaborative environment that you have there?
Great question. Well, unfortunately, we don't have any big medical technology companies in Perth. So that's been something that we've definitely focused on even before. So I started out in this deal as the investor. It was only sort of 1 year in that I came onto the management side of things. And it was important for Brandon, even before we made the investment, that we'd already talked to strategic partners, that we understood, one, that they would have any kind of interest in a technology that did what we hoped it would do, two, what stage of development, what evidence would we need to show them before they were interested in this. So we started those conversations back in 2015. And as they've, you know, attending, I guess it's difficult at the moment, but it's through years of attending conferences and getting to meet people, we've established some really lovely ongoing relationships with strategic partners, and just make sure that, we just keep those running. We tell them we're going to do something, we go back and say we've done it, you know, so that they can get to know us over the years.
I think something that you've just kind of touched on there is the longevity of how long this can take. You know, for someone that isn't in your world at all, you know, producing medtech or, you know, in the medical profession, you don't really appreciate, you know, how long that is. Yeah. So it takes great perseverance, which I think speaks to your character. Kath, OncoWrays has won numerous awards here in Australia and overseas. I think Pitch of the Palace is one of those. Do you ever take the time to stop and celebrate your success?
I think we need to consciously do that more. So that's something, there's always the next thing to get on with. And and it's interesting because most of those were sort of accidental. You know, we certainly didn't set out to enter competitions, but the benefit of having done it in hindsight has been huge. So I think the pitch at Palace, Brendan and I were on our way back from the US on the plane, and the opportunity came up, and I said, "Oh, come on, Brendan, we should do this. It will be a little fun. Like, there's no way we're going to get to the Palace, but hey." So yeah, that was a complete surprise. But I've got to say that the major benefit for me that came out of that, one of my greatest fears in becoming the CEO was I hate standing up on a stage. I hate delivering a pitch. It terrifies me. The palpitations were massive. I'm like, I'm going to let the whole company down because I'm so scared of doing this. So to have to go through the Picture Palace experience and learn how to pitch within 3 minutes because the bugles were going to start playing, and how to also, I think the other huge learning for me was that, you know, I worked in early stage venture capital and then particularly very focused in life sciences venture capital. And we're all very scientific and we focus on the science of everything, and that's how we interact with investors. But with Picture Palace, you had to change it up completely. And, you know, you were getting mentored by people who had never been involved in medtech for a day in their life. And I think that is so valuable because it's then you learn how to share what you're doing and share your enthusiasm in a way that engages people quickly and you know, and get them on board, even if they don't need to know the nitty-gritty of what you're doing. And that was, I think that's a skill that I'm so grateful that to have learnt from being part of that competition.
What a great scenario to overcome your fear of public speaking with bugles. With bugles playing. I love it. Kath, you're an inspiration to so many young women in the medtech space. So we want to know, who inspires you?
My grandma. So she was an amazing woman in STEM back in the early 1900s. She was one of 6 kids, grew up on a farm in South Africa. She was the only one of those kids to go to university, where she won the prize in maths and geography. So she would have been one of the only girls at university at all then. She then had 2 sons. Unfortunately, my grandpa died when my dad was 5. And so she was a single mother then, back then, and she dedicated her life to being a teacher. And I was really fortunate because we immigrated from South Africa when I was, well, I was born here, but we moved back and forth very regularly until I was about 8. And I never had a full school year in any kind of order until year 5. And she was with us for most of that time. So she was, you know, pretty much
an enormous influence.
Year 1 to year 4 teacher. And had a huge love of science. And so I think that she, one, was a really early woman in STEM, that she battled against great adversity and resilience and managed to have, you know, an incredible relationship with her 2 sons. I think she's a huge inspiration to me.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Kath, I have to thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy lady, and I'm really delighted that you could share your story with us. And I'm sure that our WiTWA members will also love having heard your story. And I just want to wish you luck as well. I know that you're a WiTWA award nominee, which is very exciting. So I'm kind of cheering you on from the sidelines.
Oh, thank you so much. It has been so great to get to talk to you today.
My pleasure. Thank you.